Yo,
Whoa, 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 whoa,
yo,
whoa, whoa, whoa,
woo, woo,
whoa, whoa, whoa,
woo,
whoa.
woo. Welcome back to the shit show that is Murder Moose. We are here. It is Ken and I. Josh continues his sabbatical. He has become a monk in the Himalayas now. He is practicing sobriety and meditation.
And candle making,
From
utilizing buttholes as molds.
okay, so I'm sitting in Ken's chat this morning, and I get distracted by work, and I come back and her chat is discussing, and I've heard this before, but just not directed at me, like specifically, that a human rectum could fit four grown adult raccoons in it, and Ken's
Which,
chat
by
is
the way, I still say that's not true, but
yeah,
carry on.
I don't agree either, but and they're describing talking about me fitting raccoons up my ass, and I'm just like,
You
what?
weren't even there for
I
it.
wasn't even there, and I'm
That was
like,
the best part. I don't even know how we got on the subject, but I was like, if anyone's ass is getting stretched today, it's Rod's. And they're like,
yeah,
yeah, Rod's ass gets stretched all the time. And then it just went downhill really fast.
I, I
So,
I figured,
you know,
I
we had
figured
many
that.
conversations about Rod's asshole today.
I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot of conversations about my rectum, but we are Murder Moose, and we are part of the Slash and Cast podcast network.
It's in the game.
There you go again. Um, so I was gonna say something, and then I've lost my goddamn mind. I watched the last of Letterkenny over the weekend, and it kind of made me sad because no more Letterkenny. Um,
I
but the
only watched like a few episodes of the very beginning and then I never really picked it back up, but maybe I'll have to do that at some point.
it's entertaining, and I just make fun of Pat and tell him that that's where he lives.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Um, and let's see. I mean, we got annihilated with snow on Saturday, and
Yeah, you were talking about that. How much snow did you get?
it was like 6 inches or something like that. It was, I mean, maybe it was a little more than, I don't know. It was a lot of snow. And that kind of killed my weekend plans. And I don't even know if I had any weekend plans. But
You damn well better, or I'll start throwing hands at your weekend plans.
yeah. Well, I mean,
I mean, Pat was talking about that, like somewhere in Nova Scotia, they got like what, like 8 feet of snow or something overnight, or some crazy shit.
yeah. Nine
I
in
don't know
them.
centimeters to inches, so
Yeah. Nine of them got like a bunch of fucking snow in Reno too. And was like, they were like completely dumped in it like the day after or whatever. So it was like we got snow and then they got snow, which is weird because it's usually the other way around. But yeah, there was a lot of snow this weekend, and LA was getting annihilated with rain over the weekend.
yeah, that's
Like,
moving. Like the UK is getting hit hard right now. And then we had snow last night. We had a couple inches, which I mean, here like it snowed uh and like it snowed for a few days and then it was too cold to snow and then it got a little bit warmer and then it melted a bunch of the snow and then it snowed a few inches. So it's just mush outside.
mushy, mush, mush. It's
Just mush.
that was like growing up in Ohio, where like after like during the winter, like you just don't get sun because Ohio doesn't get sun anyways, and so you get snow, and it's just like it was like mall parking lots filled with that dirty, dirty snow piles that just like
Yeah.
sits there for 3 months, you know.
Yeah, I went for a walk through the town the other day and like one half of the road was like giant mud puddles and like just muck and then the other half of the road was still frozen, but it was frozen to a point that it didn't have like any snow on top to give you any kind of traction, so it was just ice and you were like, "Well, I guess I walk down the middle of the road. Like I don't where do I walk now?"
Hey, that yeah, that just seems like that's how you get murder killed. That is
Eh,
how you get murder
it's a
killed
tiny town.
by a
There's more
killer.
traffic going up to my parents' house on the mountain than there is here.
Yeah, but your parents don't have moose murdering
That's true.
through.
I've only seen one, but I did see one. So
Did you ride it and be like, "You are my brethren. You are a murder moose.
I
Wee!"
did not. It was quite a distance away, but apparently it was like a little one. And like I've been learning about like how they stay with their mother till they're about a year, and then the mother fucks off and they just kind of are left to their own defenses, and like they live in like these little patches of the particular types of trees that they eat.
I.
It's
But
very interesting.
let's be honest. After they're about a year old, I'm assuming not much can fuck with them, or nor wants to fuck with them. Like
I would agree with you.
I moose, like their whole like thing is that they're like dinosaur mammals. So like they keep like the mother's like, you go fuck off and deal with yourself because nothing's gonna fuck with you. And then they start chasing grizzly bears around, as that video was going around in the internet a couple of like years ago. But yeah, I don't think it's being a moose is that after you hit a certain age size thing, you're probably pretty chill.
Yeah.
Your problem is other moose. If you're like a male moose, like looking for competitors, like, and you don't need instructions of that. You just like fight other moose.
Exactly, exactly. It was funny because there's my friend's father always finds this one TikToker like really funny because she had moved to Canada from the UK, so she's always like showing different things that she's learned that's different and like how her life has changed since she's moved from Canada to Canada from the UK. And she was like, talking about like weather differences. Like you open the door in the UK, you open the door in Canada, and like they're always like positive, right?
Yeah.
But then she gets to you or no, it's how she reacted when she moved to Canada from the UK. And so it's like the first one's like, she opens the door and oh my God, it's so fucking cold. Then she opens the door. She's like, yeah, it's not too bad. And like, just different shit like that. Well, then she gets to one where she opens a door and there's a moose and she immediately shuts the door and she's like, no. And she's like, after living in Canada for 5 years, she opens the door. There's a moose. She shuts the door. No.
There's a YouTuber I found at like I think I was just chatting. Like I occasionally do these just chatting streams, and I found this British dude just going down like he was like he had been in like America for like 5 years or something like that when he started this channel, and he just does these videos comparing them, and it's the same kind of thing, and it's more like it's kind of amusing, but it's kind of informative too. You know what I mean? So I get what you mean with that. So that's it. It's an interesting perspective on like how different the world is, but the same time the same. You know?
Yeah, that's some of the stuff that she talks about, like especially costs and stuff. Like it's very different. Like, she takes her dogs to the vet in the UK, she's paying $400. She took them to the vet where she lives now. It was like 150, and she was like, it's so wild. And she was like, it's just wild. And it's really, really pretty out here. And it was funny because like I've been sitting here for the last few days or like, the last week or whatever, and being like, man, I really miss the mall. Like I just want to go to the mall. And so I'm like looking up where the closest mall is, and I'm like, oh, that's an hour and a half. And I was like, wait a second. When I'm at home, I drive to Knoxville all the time. And that's like an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes
Yeah.
easy just to get there.
Yeah.
And I was like, why is this different? Like, it was funny.
It's not. It's unfamiliarity, right? Too. Like that's part of the thing. It's like if you
Yeah.
don't go somewhere or do something all the time, it's just like that's a big difference, man. It's like looking through all the dating apps over the last few months and like going, you're a half an hour away or you're 40 minutes. 40 starts being like you're like, and so it's like, yeah, it's all that thing. It's like distances, like it's not the same for everyone also, and it matters where you are, right? Like because you could be
Right.
15 miles away and be a half an hour away, or 15 miles away and 45 minutes away because of whatever. So
Traffic or whatever. Yeah. Well, and I think also like here because everything's flat, it's really cool to me because like where I live, it's like very hilly and there's all kinds of shit everywhere. And like, yeah, you can kind of use those as landmarks, but it's just the same shit all the time. Here it's super flat, but even though there's not a lot out here, there's new shit to see every time. And it's really cool.
yeah,
So like,
so I'm the exact opposite. I grew up in Flat, Ohio, Nothing anywhere besides like Lake Erie and fucking cornfields and shit. And then moving to Colorado, you're like, oh, I have this like giant monument that is, this is west. So you always know. And I am directionally challenged as fuck. So it's like, yeah, that helps. That
Yeah,
helps.
there's some towns that I've been by and stuff, and they've got like a really big building in town that's like bright fucking, colors. And so they're like, yeah, whenever you're trying to get there, all you do is you look for that building and you can see it like forever away, and you're like, oh, that's really neat.
But that's such a smaller scale activity. Like it's like going, oh, I'm like 3 blocks away and I can see that building. But then the Rocky Mountains, you're like, oh, I'm like, you stop seeing the Rocky
I'm like
Mountains when
a
you're like,
thousand miles away from the mountains, and you're like, oh yeah, see, they're so pretty.
but man, I would say being back in that dating world, I'm just like, dude, there's women on these apps, and I guess it sounds like it's kind of similar for men, like the other way around. But they're like, yeah, all I do, ski every weekend, mountain, 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 ski, ski, ski. And it's just like, Jesus Christ. So there's a single highway that goes into the mountains, like that, like where all the ski resorts shit are. And so you go and you come back at the same time as all these people, and it's like LA, where you're like, oh, I'm gonna sit in this fucking car for the next 3.5 hours. Fuck that.
Yeah, no, thank you. And plus,
Yep.
like, skiing and stuff is expensive. Like, even if you own your own stuff, like, well, I mean, I guess if you own your own stuff and then you have like a pass or whatever, but still, like, it's expensive. And
Passes are expensive as shit.
yeah,
As
it's
shit.
wild.
It's like, man, and that's been my problem. That shit is just my like kryptonite. Nope, I'm not gonna spend that kind of money. Nope, nope.
I wanted to learn how to snowboard growing up, but my parents wouldn't let me because they thought it was too dangerous. So they let me go skiing with my aunt and uncle and cousins one time. And I was so bad at it that the ski patrol, when I was at the top of one of the lifts, was like, excuse me, are you under the influence of any type of alcohol or drugs? And I was like, no. And they were like, okay, well, you seem to be really struggling. And I was like, all I did was fall off this bench trying to put my ski on. Okay. Like, please. This is as bad for me as it is for you. Like, it's
So
okay.
all that reminds me of one time I was in a parking garage in Denver, and Siri or whatever told me to go left, and it was a one-way street, and I went the wrong way on a one-way street. Got pulled over by a cop, who proceeded to give me a like, "Are you drunk?" test, which I supposedly failed when completely 100% sober, and and this is the thing where he tried to tell me I failed, and then he goes, you like I was there at the time with my wife, and he goes, you have to drive home, and I'm like, if I actually failed, I would be in handcuffs, pulled in the back of your car, you motherfucker. But like, I think he felt stupid or something. I don't know what exactly was going through Popo's mind, but I'm like,
I love it. 10 out of 10.
yeah.
Way
Okay.
to go.
So before we dive into this spectacular adventure, kid, what have you been watching so we could go over and dive into Mandy?
I watched a couple episodes of Bob's Burgers yesterday. I've just been reading. I've been reading a lot. And like watching TikTok. Like that's pretty much all I've been doing. I'm on the second book of the Court of Thorns and Roses franchise. Um, so I'm on Winds and Fury, I guess, or Mists and Fury. I don't remember, but it's the second one. I'm almost through with it. It's really good. So I've just been like sitting and reading and eating and reading and eating and taking
Is
a bath and
is
reading.
this smutty fantasy or is it just fantasy?
I didn't think it was smutty, but there's definitely some smut in it. Like the first one, it's in there, and you're like, oh, like it's just kind of out of the blue, and you're like, oh, okay. The second one, it's like, bam, cock, and you're like, oh,
It's so funny because like I think that TikTok and Instagram and all these stuff, and probably what was the one before TikTok that was like 6
Vine.
sec. Fine, yeah. I don't think men completely understood what was happening with horny fantasy before that stuff. Like, I think like those Vine and TikTok and stuff, like opened the eyes to like you just sit there. What did the centaur? Where did the centaur come? What? What? And you're
There's a
just like,
woman on TikTok that she'll like read different lines from smutty books and she'll like make faces or like make comments. And sometimes she has a water bottle and every like at least once a video she picks it up and she goes, "Shh, no," and like sprays it. um, but like some of the shit they say is wild. Now, this one, the thing that bothers me about these, like there's a few little things here and there that bother me, but I'm taking them as fun and I'm not taking them too seriously. But like she's always hissing at him. Like they use the terminology hiss and like bare teeth and stuff, not like during sexual moments, just in general. And so I was talking to a friend and I was like, so is she just walking around the whole time being like and I was like, that seems very unproductive or counterproductive and not very beneficial. And then like when you're burying your teeth or whatever, just being like that's all I can picture. And it's weird. Yeah. Just
I.
walking around hissing.
It's funny because I feel like before the internet, especially, like it was this weird like world thing where like men got the fucking reputation for just being horny like all the time because men are obviously horny. But then you sit there and you go, these books have been around forever. Women just hide it better. And then, like, when the internet came out, there was enough women that were like, this is insane. And they, go do TikToks and shit of that. And then everyone, it's like,
But then
I
the
mean,
problem is then people know like that's what you're reading. It's like when 50 Shades of Grey came out, people were reading it in like subways and stuff, and they were like, oh, you're like literally watching porn right now. Okay, like
dude,
and then for me, like I was so excited for the second book, so I posted about it on Twitter, and everybody's like, "Oh my god, you're gonna love it! You're gonna love it!" Almost immediately regretted posting it because the first scene is she's like, and then I saw his thickness, and I was like, "All right, like I guess." And it just kept on, and I was like,
dude,
I'm not a prude, and like teenage me would have probably been all over this, but part of me's like, okay, like say you fucked and moved on. Like I don't need to know about when he slid his finger in you and he felt the dampness. Like don't care. I read that line today. That was a
well,
good
you
one.
know what's funny is when you start in a world that Twilight is your starting point. You go Twilight, regardless of what you have like think of those books and those movies, they're not exactly like highest tier quality of literature.
Well,
And
no, but
they,
they're written for young teens. Like they're written
yeah,
for like 12, 13, 14 year olds.
but then you take a minute, like horny housewife
Hmm.
who takes that and makes fan fiction of it, and you have 50
Hmm.
Shades of Grey. It's like I'm not. Let's just put it this way: the equality that we're working towards means that when women write things like 50 Shades of Grey, I don't know if it helps the equality and the move to it because that shit is fucking toxic. And if you go into those books and movies and shit and go, this isn't toxic, you're not analyzing the situation correctly
Yeah.
because the whole point of 50 Shades of Grey, and I've watched all the movies. I've not read the books. I'm not in that fucking world. But that this guy is a piece of shit, and because he's a fucking billionaire, it's all right. It sends a weird message, right?
Yeah. Well, and
Sends,
that's my issue with these books. Like Jessicans and I have talked about it on stream a few times, where like one of the main male characters literally is discussing how he used her for something, and you're like, why are you what like huh? And then the other one is using her, and it's just an entire game where she's just a piece that's being moved around, and I'm like, why? What? Like they openly said, okay.
it. it's that world where like sexual fantasies specific. I mean, fantasies in general, but sexual fantasies is like particular. Like you go into things where you go, what makes my downstairs region feel good isn't exactly what you want to do in normal everyday life. So it's that weird like, and
Right.
I think that like the extremes of that happen way more with women than men, because men are like men. I feel like men are way more simple with that shit. But I don't know.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Let's dive though. If there's anything else you want to talk about, did you watch anything else before we dive into Mandy?
No, there's a bunch of stuff I want to check out though. I've been linking you stuff or like tagging you on
Yeah.
stuff on TikTok, but there's a bunch of like really great stuff out. So I definitely want to check it out. I want to check out Lisa Frankenstein at some point.
Is that out yet? I know that's
I guess because Josh was reviewing it. Not our Josh, but a different
yeah,
Josh.
yeah,
But he gets early screeners sometimes, so maybe not. But
yeah. That's one of those first like kind of like, I mean, horror comedy, yes. So if you're doing a horror comedy, well, I'm good with it. So, okay, okay, yes, we are talking about Mandy from. God, I will say, I thought Mandy was older than it was. Mandy came out in 2018, and I'm
mm-hmm,
just sitting there
mm-hmm.
going, 2018 still feels like it was like 2 or 3 years ago, and no, 2018 was, 6 years ago at this point. Um, but this movie, regardless of how badly Ken shits on it in the next couple of like minutes, was the first movie that kind of like was Nicolas Cage's. So Nicolas Cage had like that arc of like leading man shit from the late '90s to the early 2000s that went really really badly after a while, and then he got the IRS came after him and for like buying $20 million like dinosaur skulls and shit like that. And that was Nicolas Cage's like he got into this like almost 10 years. It might have been 10 years. But he had a 10-year span. Let's say 10 years span where he took every single role that got offered to him. And Mandy is kind of that like first movie that got him attention for like not being terrible and being in terrible movies for a really like it had been a long time since he was in a good movie. So like like Mandy as a film might not have hit like the masses, but Mandy like for Nicolas Cage was that thing that I think that started giving him a little bit of like credit again. And I remember this coming out in one of the few movies I've actually rented on like VOD because it had gotten so much attention when it was out. And Ken hated it and says it was the worst movie ever made, and she
No,
watched it.
I didn't say it was the worst movie ever made. Now, calm your tits there, Buckaroo.
I I think after talking to Ken about it for the first time, she goes, "I think I was supposed to be high when I watched."
Yeah, I do. I think that had I been high, I would have really enjoyed it. But I don't know if I should have been stoned or if I should have been like dropping acid or maybe hitting up some Molly. Like I don't know, but something was needed.
I don't think you want to take the BDSM LSD that was in this movie, but
No, I don't think so. I also don't want to be stung by a giant bee scorpion thing. Nope. Dude, they're fucking pupils. Anyway, do you want to give the description and then we can talk about budget and then go from there?
yeah. Let me look it up on my phone.
Oh
Real
wait,
quick
I'll
here.
pull it up. I've got it. Okay, so Mandy, the 2018 hit The Enchanted Lives of a Couple in a Secluded Forest are brutally shattered by a nightmarish hippie cult and their biker demon henchmen, propelling a man into a spiraling, surreal rampage of vengeance.
So
Dawn.
I will say about this film, and I I almost like at some point would like you to go rewatch it because I think that this movie hits you with things that just like the first time you watch it, especially you're like, what? I think I fell asleep through part of it when I paid to rent it. That's how wild this movie is. Like, but like, I was just like tired when I was watching it. This movie is
Right.
out of control. But let's talk about your pupils because you just pointed out, especially the Mandy pupils. Mandy's pupils in this
Oh.
movie, I was wondering about how much she was wearing contacts or if it was just visual effects because you sit there and you watch them, you're like, okay, but before go into budget first because I'm like disregarding what we were talking about with that.
Okay, so as far as the budget for Mandy goes, it was a $6 million budget. In box office, they only pulled in 1.2 million in domestic, international only about 25,000 or 25 backup 250,000, so worldwide being about 1.4, but then through DVD sales and Blu-ray sales, not counting streaming purchases or anything like that, they pulled in an additional 4.3. So I mean they made up what they put in, but I mean, and I'm sure they've made a lot more now that streaming and stuff, but
Yeah.
yeah.
This movie got a lot of press, like a lot of press, because it was like Nicolas Cage had been that like whipping boy of the like press media for a long time because he's just been in so many bad movies,
Mhm.
so many bad movies, and this was like the one that people were like, wow, this is like you might say you might not it might not be your film, but it's like a
Right.
well put together movie. It's super artistic. It's like we talked about like we talked about Skinamarink as like this running joke on the show at this point, but like Skinamarink is like artistic, right? This movie is super artistic, but in a trippy way. It's very trippy the entire time, which is why like there are shots in this film that I'm still like, what? Specifically, like when they overlay Mandy's face on the cult leader dude's like face. That scene, the first time I saw it, and this time, you're just like, I knew it was coming this time, but you're like, it's just like you're watching. You're like, what the fuck is happening? Because they're like overlaying them so much and the lighting and shit like that, and you're like, what? What was your thought watching the overlay face thing when she like they drug the shit out of Mandy and go from there?
I'm not gonna lie, during that scene, I don't remember it, so I may have zoned out at that point. But
That was
like there are bits where like I focused really hard and I was like, yeah, this is really interesting, like this is really good. And then once it got to a certain point, I was like, oh. And I don't even know where I went mentally, but I checked out for a while and then I came back and there was penis and then I was like, oh, and I watched that bit and then I like zoned out and then there was chainsaw fight and I was like, hell yes. I don't remember how it ended.
okay. Two things. One, the old lady in this. Do you remember where that woman was that in a movie that we watched?
In which
The
movie that we watched?
she played Sally in the Texas Chainsaw from 2021.
Oh. Oh yeah. Okay, okay, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that was the set, like the modern Sally because that woman died a little while ago.
Well, and then there was also the one guy in the movie is one of Rob Zombie's guys.
Yeah,
What's his name? I can't remember his name, but
let
he's one
me
of his
look.
boys.
Well, dude, he's the one who like best part of 31. If you've never watched 31, like
Yeah, I
the
agree.
he was like that guy, and he was the one who replaced the guy who died in the last Three from Hell.
Mhm.
Uh, what's his name? It's Richard something. It's a Richard Brake. Dude, I saw him from behind. That man is so distinct, and I don't think I knew who he was the first time I watched this movie. And like I'm like, is that the dude from like the Rob Zombie movies? And he turns around, yup. And that dude is so incredibly creepy every time he's on film. And if you've never seen 31, 31 is it's Rob Zombie where the dialogue. I keep saying this, Rob Zombie. Let somebody else write your scripts. Please,
Mm-hmm.
for the love of sweet baby Jesus, let somebody else write your scripts. But that opening of 31 is so wonderful, and you're just like, this dude's awesome, and he like kind of steals that movie. And you just like, he's got this small part in here, and you're like, this dude is he's always so good, because he's just like, you just like know the scummy things that are going through this guy's head, because he just looks so fucking scummy.
Oh yeah, I forgot that he was in Barbarian.
Yeah, he was the guy who lived in the
Father
basement.
or the yeah.
Yeah, he was the serial killer rapist who made the mother. Yeah.
Man, he's been doing movies since 1993.
Yeah. And
Wow.
I wonder if he's looked creepy that creepy the entire time, but yeah, he's a pretty creepy looking dude. Yeah, that back scene, it's one of the more memorable scenes of this movie, and this movie is filled with memorable scenes. Like, Ken, did you know about the Nicolas Cage goes in the bathroom and screams like a lunatic scene?
I did not. So that was really great. Like that one I did, I was like, wait, what? Because it made me think of, because I still haven't seen the movie with it, but there's a movie with Daniel Radcliffe where he like loses his shit and he has like no clothes on except undies, and he's like freaking out and like taking off and running around. And that's what I thought of, but like a darker, heavier, gorier version of it.
Yeah. I it's just Nicolas Cage. Like, I think that most of us can't like view acting like Nicolas Cage is acting. You listen to that guy talk about acting, and it's like he's speaking like another language while speaking English. But like, the dude's got such passion for it that it's like, it's kind of like, you're like, oh, okay, because that scene is like, it's so over the top, but like fits in perfectly to what this movie is, and you're just like, oh, okay, because like, I mean, the whole Mandy thing is, I mean, the premise is, crazy cult man sees lady, wants lady, lady laughs at dick, gets burnt alive, husband gets revenge. I mean, that's the whole plot of this movie, right? It's not like a complicated thing. That when she starts laughing at him, like he like pulls out his cock and he's just like, "Meh." It's almost like Buffalo Bill's like, would you? It's like that got that Buffalo Bill.
Me?
Would you? I'd fuck me. But like, like between like his dick and his shitty song, she's like, did you write this about yourself? And just like starts cackling at him, and it's just like, it is. I love it so much because it's like, you know what's gonna happen, but this bitch is just like, I don't care. You're fucking terrible. And here we are. And and now everyone's going to like, I mean, there's a couple things. One, this movie uses weird color palettes, like over like saturated like kind of stuff the whole film, and like I think especially someone from like you and me, Ken, who is as ADHD as we are, that's kind of like, it's kind of like distracting, especially the first time. It's like you were like, I don't know, you don't expect it, so it takes you out of like a little bit concentration. Two, the last scene in this movie still reminds me of the massive weight of the unbearable weight of massive talent, with him and Pedro Pascal like, you know, staring at each other in the car and just going. That's but it was him and like his dead wife or whatever at the end of this movie, and you're just like, what? Oh, okay. This movie is just batshit crazy. Did you, with all your research, you said it cost $5 million or $6 million? Was it $5 million?
6 million.
How long was this movie like to shoot? Because I didn't say how.
I did not look, but I can definitely find out.
I'm just wondering because it feels like they got a lot done in a pretty short period of time.
Let's see. Do. I do not know. Oh wait, production. Here we go. Um, nope.
Because it seems like they did a lot in like a pretty short amount of time, and like with how crazy this movie is, like there isn't all that much like that probably took a lot to do. I think that the chainsaw fight probably took a long time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There's that. There's the whenever he gets into the to fights, it probably took a little bit longer, but like it's a pretty small scale, even though the scale is insane like the whole time. But like it's a pretty small scale movie, but it's just like kind of like Nicolas Cage being. I One of the things I did forget was that like this movie does that thing.
I did not realize that Elijah Wood was one of the producers, was the producer.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, he's been very attached to the indie horror scene, especially since like leaving Lord of the Rings. Like, he did the Maniac remake, which is wild. Maybe we do
Yeah,
that
that's a
someday.
good one.
He
Yeah.
did that, and he just started up a company with the guys who did Mondo, because Mondo got like bought out or whatever, which does like movie memorabilia and shit like that. They done a lot of my crazy
I think
posters came
it's
from
Spectre Vision.
something like that, and they just
Yeah.
announced that like last week or a couple of weeks ago. He's just like this is his shit, right? And he's in one of the villains in the Toxic Avenger movie that's coming out, starring Peter Dinklage.
Yes.
He looks like the Penguin in it. If you've seen pictures
Mhm.
of him in it, but yeah, completely just does stuff weird shit. And like you watch his horror movies, and he's done a lot of them. I mean, we talked about Maniac, but he does these weird indie like type horror movies. Like there was one like where his dad like sends him a letter after like being out of his life for his like whole most of his life or whatever, and he goes and meets this guy and hangs out with him, and it's then he figures out it's not really his dad, and like his dad's really locked in the basement, and just like weird shit like that. You're like, what is Elijah Wood doing? So like it doesn't surprise me, and like this movie, despite Ken's feelings for it, uh, got a lot of attention like when it came out, right? And like a lot of that, most of that has to do with what I was saying about like Nicolas Cage did shitty movies for like 10 years, and this was like the one of the first non-shitty movies he did for a while, right? Yeah. So Ken, I have to ask. I think that this movie might have been too much with the like. Was it too hard for you as ADHD 101 to concentrate on?
Yes. Yes, we watched it in Discord. And everybody in Discord basically had like the same thought. Well, some people really liked it a lot more because of the fact that it's kind of got that rock opera feel like embedded into it. There's a few people in the community that are like obsessed with it, especially from the music that's within it. Um, but yeah, like I said, the ADHD was flowing. I was watching it, zoned out, came back, saw the eyeball smush, like the face smush, zoned out, came back. I mean, it's good, but it's definitely one that I'd have to rewatch a few times because I mean, it's not Skidamarink. All right. Nothing
It's
can live up to Skidamarink. Skidamarink is just the best of the best. If that's God tier. Okay. So like, but no, I mean, in all actuality, it's not Skidamarink. I watched it. I just zoned out in certain places.
it's
And it's 2 hours.
yeah, it's like a little bit under 2 hours, right? And I think that this movie, and like I said, I when I bought it on VOD like in 2018, I think I ended up like falling asleep for a couple minutes during it like that first time. I think that it might be sensory overload for us ADHD people, right? Like
Honestly, probably.
yeah, and I think going in and watching it this time, and I paused it a couple times, like go to the bathroom or whatever. But like, I think that this movie might actually be too much for ADHD people, which is weird because it's changing a lot of stimuli. It's changing the visuals, like the lighting, and then the sound effects are like all over the place because it's like the drug induced like acts of it, like and it's just like the first time you watch it is like you have this demon bikers from hell, a cult, and you go, and then you realize, you find out in the movie that they're not really demon bikers from hell. They're this biker gang that like did really bad LSD and are now like insane from it. You have a cult leader who when you laugh at his penis, he burns you alive. You have it's a lot in both visual and storytelling, and it's all over the place, and I think in a really good way. But like the thing about ADHD, as Ken will tell you, when you have it and don't know what to focus on, it's so draining. Like it's so draining. And this movie is a lot with that, and like it like overwhelms you, and like if you don't know what's happening or have like a comprehension of where the plot's going and all this stuff, I completely understand. Like I think that like, and it was one of these weeks where I'm like, oh, Josh would have been perfect for this episode because the visually,
lighting,
I mean, the lighting and the visuals of this movie are fucking fantastic. It's and it's not just like how it's shot, but they do cool overlays and cool like effects and that aren't over the top, but like aren't things you normally see, right? Like the I talked about it earlier, the Mandy's face over the serial killer while the cult leader while he's giving Jeremiah while he's giving the speeches and everything like that. It's like really cool to look at, but it's like you're like, and it's got that red tone the whole time and all that stuff. It's just a very simple plot. It's a revenge movie, but like everything else is just like all over the place, and it's just like I will always love Nicolas Cage in his tiger like long sleeve like shirt, just screaming like a maniac, pouring vodka all over himself, and then just chugging vodka and just going and just yeah. Also, I have to say the casting in this movie is fucking amazing because Jeremiah pulls off being creepy really well, but like his lackeys are all fucking creepy as shit. Like especially the dude who goes out and plays the that's such a good touch. The ocarina, like he plays like a stone ocarina. And you're like, I don't know. Do you get what was in that jar that they handed him when like he went out and met him?
I assume it's some type of drug, but
No,
then I thought it was somebody's heart, and then I was like, I don't know.
it was the fat guy that remembered like the fat guy that was like part of Jeremiah's cult, like the older dude came in and was like he can't like find his own dick in the mud or whatever, like, and just like,
Oh yeah.
and so they killed, and I think that was his fat. I'm not completely sure because they don't go into it, but like I'm pretty sure that was like that's what that was, and I think it's so funny that they said like this mystique that these guys are like demon things from hell, and like then the dude, what's his name, Clark, the old black guy, tells him tells Nicolas Cage that they were the like they did the really bad LSD, and they're like crazy now, and then you like after they capture him, and he just wakes up, and one guy is like watching porn, just like watching the guy get like banging that chick doggy style for like one. I'm like, I guess they don't show any penetration, but two, they're just watching porn.
Yep. I never understood that whole like guys that just sit around and watch porn together thing. Like that's always been really weird. Like,
dude, I did it when I was like in middle school, and because you're like scattering porn, and you're like porn. like it's that precious resource. You can do it because like back then it was like before the internet was like really going, and you're like, okay, we'll sit here and watch porn together. Just but now I get. But this movie was in like what 83, so the year
Yeah.
Rod was born.
Oh, little baby Rod, you could have been part of the porn
Like
via
oh,
semen. I had to finish that up because otherwise that would have been really wrong. So I needed to include the semen part.
okay. I have two questions, kid, and one
Okay.
we're gonna ask these questions in this order. One, what what do you think offset you like watching this like what messed with kid?
I think like as far as like what detracted from my experience, is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean like what was the thing that had gave you a hard time like connecting with Mandy as it was going along?
There was like a little bit of like the dialogue was kind of super intermittent. It felt like in certain parts it was like multiple different movies being split up, but at the same time one movie. Um it was very, and I know that it probably was not intended to be this way, but there were moments that it felt extremely pretentious, but I know that that may just be me projecting, to be completely honest. Um it There were definitely some creepy elements. There was definitely some creep factor, but and like yeah, like the gore and everything was great. The colors, it was a lot of colors, a lot of colors, a lot of like I couldn't even tell you the music that was playing because I was so like distracted by the colors. And I've got, like I said, I've got a friend who's very into it and talks about the music obsessively, and I'm like, dude, I don't even remember the opening song. Like I don't remember any of it.
Yeah.
I Nope.
I think that it's like I said, I think it's like stimulation overload for like people if you have that like any kind of spectrum with that. Okay, two.
Hmm.
Would you consider watching this film again and maybe like even in increments or whatever? Because I honestly think you watching this by yourself, like not with like your community, where you could get up and pause it and like walk away for a couple minutes and like go to the bathroom or get a drink or get a snack or something like that would do you a world of like good. Not to mention like it gives you that ability to kind of like absorb things again, let alone like you kind of know where things are going.
Yeah, I'd do it. I would absolutely watch it again. Like
Yeah.
I would definitely give it another shot. I think yeah, I think that I was just really distracted. And it wasn't people in Discord that were distracting me. It was I just literally zoned the fuck out. Like I
Yeah.
remember watching it and then staring at the curtains for a while and then coming back and like 15 minutes had passed and I was like, I don't know what's going on at all.
Yeah. Yeah. It's man, it made me kind of sad because we watched this and then like Carl Weathers just died and Carl Weathers obviously was in Predator with Duke, the old black guy in this film. And Carl Weathers, I mean, Predator is one of my favorite like sci-fi movies of all time. But like,
Hmm.
um, this movie is just like I I don't think pretentious is the right word. I think this movie is it try. Now it's debatable, like how far this or how much this gone. It tries to be like it's kind of like what they talk about in Scream like 7, right? It's elevated horror, and this I feel like
Hmm.
this movie might have had a lot to do with like kind of kickstarting that whole movement because this is 2018, right? And that was the same
Yeah.
year Hereditary came out, right? So this movie is very much like in that same like I think it kind of like brought a lot of attention to that because we sit here and we talk about horror every week, but like there's a large like percentage of like the population that doesn't watch horror on a regular basis, right? And like or like they either think they're too good or they're like that's just trash like cinema and I think this movie had a lot of that like revival in the late 2010s, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah, I think so.
I I think that this movie is a it might be a little too long, like you said, Kim. I think like if it would have gone closer to an hour 30, it would have probably been easier
I
to
think even an
digest.
hour 45 would have been good. Like, I mean, because there's definitely a lot of to set the tone and the mood. And like, I understand all of that aspect of it. But I think like an hour 45 probably would have been a sweet spot for it because there's definitely enough that you could have cut out like little bits and pieces.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, I think of things of like the all the heavy metal like anime style visions of Mandy or like very like, but like I think
but I
that's like
think those were necessary because those are kind of cool.
no, but what I'm
So,
saying, I love them. They're dope. I think that like that probably led to a lot of the like, oh, is this being pretentious kind of things that you're talking about? Like it's a very like this is a very artsy horror movie. I mean, it reminds me of things like Black Swan kind of
yeah,
things, where it's just
yeah.
like where it's not it's not a film that's like all about the adventure from point A to point B. It's about like the scenery on that adventure. It's about the like adventure. I think I said adventure, but it's about everything else. It's about not getting to your destination. It's about the ride. It's about the journey, right? It's about everything that and because like I said, it's not a complicated film. It's a pretty simple like plot. It's a
Right.
pretty and yeah. So it's I think this movie's wild. I think it like I understand. Like I said, the first time I watched it, I think I fell asleep a little bit too. So it's yeah, I it's a weird movie. The fucking chainsaw fight. Any movie with a chainsaw fight gets. As I don't know if you saw the trailers for the new Winnie the Pooh Blood Honey movie that's coming out, the sequel where
I didn't
when
watch the trailers for it. No.
I watched a video about the trailer and from the YouTube channel 3C Films. I like that kid a lot. He's like in his late 20s, but I call him a kid because I'm 40. I'm an old man. But he did a video about it,
Oh
and
my lord.
Winnie the Pooh's
Sorry.
running around with a flaming chainsaw in it. A flaming chainsaw. A flaming chainsaw, kid.
That seems right.
I, I have to say, that movie
Who
kind of
do you
looks
think?
interesting.
Do you think Bloomhouse is gonna pull? Sorry, Blumhouse is gonna pull the Mickey Mouse horror first. You think that they're gonna snag it first?
I don't know. Because dude, it's like the same people that made the Blood and Honey movie, right? And did you know they're whole like doing a whole cinematic like universe that supposedly when you watch the credit scene of this Winnie the Pooh movie, it's like gonna set up like who's in it, and there's like the whole like Peter Pan horror movie and like the Bambi horror movie.
That's amazing. I guess I should watch the first one. I heard it's terrible.
Yeah,
And that the
well,
only reason that they got the second one was because so many people just wanted to see
well,
how terrible the first one was.
so the first one had a $50,000 budget and it looks like garbage. You just watch the trailers and shit. The movie doesn't look good. They like had $1 million budget or something like that for the second one, and it looks significantly better, like the special effects and stuff like that. And
I would hope so.
yeah, I mean, you're going 20 times the budget, right? Like 50,000 to a
Yeah.
million. And like the looks like the practical effects are way better. So I mean, I don't know. I I don't know. It's horror doesn't need a much. Like we talked, like you said, this Mandy is $5 million, and you go or $6 million, whatever, and it's like, oh, you can see it because it's not a huge scale movie. Also, I felt like was I the only one rewatching this going the ending of this movie reminded me of Midsummer. Like, and this movie came out years before Midsummer, but like the burning of the
Yeah, they brought that up in the Discord. They were
yeah.
like, "This is very reminiscent of Midsummer," and I was like, "Yeah, but like that one's a lot smaller than the what." And it was like, "Oh well, actually, you're right."
I That whole ending is very weird. Where it's just like he's like goes in and like fights people. It's like almost a video game where like you have to fight the bosses one at a time. But yeah,
Hmm.
um, I one two things about this film. One, I understand it being a little odd and not like everyone enjoying it. Two, I appreciate it because Nicolas Cage is like what the cool movies he's been doing the last 6 years or so. I feel like have a lot to do with this movie. Um, he still got a lot of wild movies I haven't watched, like the samurai movie he did, or what the fuck that was called, the Outland. I don't even know what that was called. It was on Shutter. I don't have Shutter anymore, but that and like things like Pig. I still need to watch Pig. I don't. Have you watched Pig?
I
So
have
Pig,
not. Sorry,
yeah,
I have not watched Pig.
it's one of those movies that I'm like supposed to be really good. So like he's done a lot of cool movies the last few years, and I think this,
Dream Scenario was great. It was so good.
yeah. I need to
So
watch that one also. I don't watch enough crazy Nicolas Cage movies, and I need to watch more of them. But yeah, like, do you
yeah,
remember like before Mandy came out, like he was just getting like he was on like they would make YouTube lists of how shitty his movies were.
yeah. I remember that. I also remember being in the Bahamas, right around the time that like I want to say around the time that the IRS and the government got onto him for everything, and he owned a house on in Nassau. I think it was in Nassau on the way to the Atlantis place. And the guy that was driving the boat would be like pointing out people's famous people's homes, and he would get to that one. And he'd go like, "And that house is none other the Nicolas Cage," and like every like constantly, and that house back there owned by none other than Nicolas Cage.
Dude, I will say, man, the unbearable weight of massive talent, which was I think it came out in 2022. Whenever it came out, that movie is
I still need
literally
to watch that.
that movie is one of my favorite movies ever. That's like how good that movie is. It's so fucking good. And Nicolas Cage and Pedro Pascal, and it's just so good. It's just I love that movie with all my heart. That movie is wonderful. So just for that, the like Mandy I think has something to do with. So yeah, I think Nicolas Cage is a fucking treasure. Someone was shitting all over him somewhere, and it might have been. I don't think it was. I don't think it was your chat. It might have been. I don't know where it was, but I'm like, you guys need to put some respect on Nicolas Cage's name because
I don't think it was in my chat because people wouldn't talk shit about Sir Nicolas Cage in my chat.
people in your chat talk about shoving raccoons up my ass, Ken.
Okay, but you're not Sir Nicolas Cage, okay? Like you can enjoy a good old raccoon in the asshole once in a while, all right? It's acceptable. They want to spread your anal cavity. I don't know what to tell you. I really don't. Think of it as creating pockets. You can have a pocket dimension in your anus.
I
It's
I'm
perfect.
completely about people putting things in my butt consensually. I don't want raccoons in my ass. That's all
That's fair.
the
That's fair. But would you like a koala? They do have that weird form of koala
no.
syphilis or whatever.
No, exactly. And they smell bad and they're drop bears. They would drop directly into
Well,
my
what
asshole.
about a sloth? Like, what if you shoved the sloth in all the way, like butt first into your ass? So then it's like
No.
little
I
claws and its face could just poke
if,
out.
okay, if a sloth wanted to like grab my butt with his weird sloth hands and like slowly sloth lick my butthole, maybe I would care less than every other scenario we've gone over. But I don't want a sloth tongue in my asshole in a normal case.
What about a bird?
No, birds are evil.
Okay.
There's a bird upstairs. There's a reason why I didn't even try to get a bird when the divorce started. Don't want the bird. Don't want a bird ever again. I mean, a cockatoo. I mean, a cockatoo. A cockatoo. I was trying to be funny, and then I think I stumbled all over
You
cockatoo.
did really, you stumbled all over that cock, but you did a good job with it.
Ah,
Very proud.
I'm very proud too. Oh shit. Okay. What's your final verdict on Mandy? Kim?
I'll give it another shot. If you're
Okay.
really into art style movies, if you like good music, from what I've gathered, again, I definitely was zoned out for that. If you like art movies, if you like, really dark and like some pretty in-depth shit without being too heavy, yeah, give it a shot. Maybe be really high. Except I did read some reviews online that said that they watched the movie high and it killed their buzz very quickly. So maybe don't. But
I
yeah.
guess it seems like a risky game where you're just like, because you ever hear about people being like on drugs or drunk or whatever, and something like fucking pulls them out of the experience. This
Hmm.
seems like this movie could do that real well because it's wild. Yeah, I think this movie is not for everyone. I think that artistically it's fucking gorgeous. I think that if you know what's happening or gonna happen, it's easier to handle. I think it was way easier for me to watch this time. So yeah, it had been 6 years or whatever since I watched it last. So, um, do you have any things you wanted to watch next week? Because I had an idea, but
I'm ready. Hit me with it.
so I was thinking about Lake Mungo because that's one of those movies that I keep seeing. I've seen it and I really enjoyed it. But do you know anything about Lake Mungo?
I do not. Can you spell mungo?
Mungo.
Okay.
It's an Australian found footage movie about this girl drowns in this lake in Lake Mungo,
Hmm.
and then they proceed to like it's a mockumentary about it, and then it's wild, and I am interested on how uh, you like it.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Let's do it.
Let's do okay next week, Lake Mungo. Okay, Ken is falling asleep.
Yeah,
I'm
I
sleepy.
am.
We're tired, and I gotta edit this tomorrow, so we'll deal with that later. So, okay, murdermoose.com. Go there, buy merch, do all those things. Check out our YouTube, subscribe there so we get to 100 subscribers. Do all that shit. We have, yeah, our Murder Moose Pod, Twitter, do all that shit. And yeah, so go to continue.com, get all her shit. Go to Rod _ Johnson everywhere else, and you'll find me, and you're good. So let's wrap it up. Next week is Lake Mungo. We'll see you guys later. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, whatever. And we'll catch you guys later. Bye.
Bye.